You're listening to Ricky and Jimmy on Relationships, the show where we uncover the thoughts and behaviors that are sabotaging your relationship and what you can do about it. Jimmy and I are passionate about sharing the ways that imperfect partners like you and I can shift unhealthy relational dynamics and create closeness. So welcome. Drop your defenses and open your heart, eyes, and ears. Let's learn how to be the best partner we can be together. What's happening now? We're going to kill it. This is going to be amazing. Okay.
Yeah, we are going to kill it. Okay. I'm going to let you intro because you're so much better than me.
Okay, let's do this unplanned intro. Today, for our episode number 3, yes, Jimmy and I want to talk to you guys about the questions that we get the most often on our social media accounts. We wish that we could answer everybody's question one-on-one, but we're not counselors. We just love this topic a ton, and there's no way we could answer all of the people one-on-one. So here we are. Let's talk about quick answers to the most frequent questions that we get on the social media accounts about relationships.
Yeah, I love that. That was perfect. Let's start with an easy one, because last week we kind of dove into we talked a lot about turning conflict into closeness. If you haven't seen that episode, I think that's a great episode.
Yeah.
My only minor critique to that episode is that we spent a lot of time on kind of destructive behaviors to watch out for. We probably didn't spend as much time talking about all the little things that we should be doing instead of. We did mention the antidotes and all that stuff, but it's super nice to try to talk about what to do instead and not just focus on the negative.
I agree. And there are actually studies that show this is so good. Should I interrupt this podcast with a real quick study?
Obviously.
They took three groups of couples, and I want to get this right because this study was fascinating. 3 groups of couples, and with one group, they told them techniques for conflict management. And that's all they told them. Like, hey, here are some techniques for conflict management. See if in a month this helps your relationship. With another group, they taught them, here are conflict management techniques, and here are also ways that you can increase closeness with each other. So that's cool. They wanted to see who would do better. Then they took the third group, and they didn't teach them anything about conflict management. All they said was, here are ways to increase closeness, and I want you to guess which group did the best at the end of the month. They said, let's reassess your marriage. How are things going? Or your relationship? Do you have any idea?
I guess the third one, just because...
You're right. You're right. The folks who learned about conflict management did not do any better. They had 0 relationship happiness increase. Isn't that nuts? Isn't that nuts? And the folks who were only focusing on closeness had bigger gains than the people who were doing both, just because they weren't worrying about the conflicts. They were only thinking, how can I increase closeness and endear this person to me and do things that make them feel loved? That's nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts.
It's a lesson.
It's almost like the conflict resolution takes care of itself when you can work on the closeness.
Exactly. Yeah. You're less motivated to fight when you're more focused on taking care of each other and making the other happy.
And you can't really be close if you're practicing those destructive behaviors. So if you're really trying to be close, then you start to pay attention, like, oh, this defensiveness or dismissiveness or blaming them or criticism, that doesn't really bring us any closer together. And so
it's totally messing up that closeness thing I want to do later. So I'm going to stop being a jerk. Yeah. Anyway.
So one of the first things I want to talk about, just because we're going to be answering a ton of questions, and I thought that it'd be important to kind of just establish a little bit of a foundation, is one thing I wanted to talk about and get your opinion on is, a lot of these are going to overlap, obviously, because when you're talking about how to solve different problems. So one of the things that was just mulling around in my brain is a common thread is always going to be emotional safety. And I feel like if you don't have emotional safety in your relationship, if you don't feel close with your partner, feel safe with your partner during conflicts, I feel like they're just going to be continually unresolved. Compromise is going to seem impossible. Distance and disconnection continues to grow. So I would love to hear your just kind of take on emotional safety. Give me whatever comes into your head when you think of how do we grow, cultivate, prioritize emotional safety in our relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the vast majority of our questions, let me scroll through real quick. The vast majority of our questions have to do with some sort of conflict or problem that people are having.
Sure.
And without a couple knowing how to or spending any time on building safety, these things are going to keep popping up. It doesn't really matter if you say the perfect thing,
Yeah.
you know, in response to this argument. If you guys don't have safety and closeness, these problems aren't going. You're the conflict couple, right? You're the
For
group
sure.
that's only focusing on, here's the same problem over and over again.
Yeah.
So
what I was thinking about, and what I want our listeners to think about, is like the ability for both partners to show up as their authentic selves, not behind a mask of fear or avoidance, vulnerably and respectfully be able to express hurts, needs, desires, and then them feeling confident that the majority of the time their partner will be receptive and they will feel valued and heard during that conversation.
Yeah.
So
now, to a couple in distress, that seems like a pretty tall order.
Absolutely,
what you just said.
it does,
but
yeah.
I gotta say, even for my partner and I, who were quite distressed in the beginning, I'd say, just sitting down with each other and talking about how we want to be on the same team, that helped a lot. Because
That's
then
huge.
even though we were feeling defensive when these things were popping up, we could come back to our agreement that we're on the same team and we both want this to work out. So we're going to push through the discomfort and the lack of safety that we both feel and have this difficult discussion.
I think that's so important. What you what you said about having this devotion to being on the same team. You could call it kind of having a standard in your relationship.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is how we're gonna handle these conflicts, or how do you think we should handle these? I mean, all those questions. When you really care about your relationship with another person, I think that those are so important to have. And I never had them, and I don't know
before.
if you before, And maybe I was just too scared. Maybe I was just
ignorant. A lot of us don't know that we need to be doing these things.
Yeah. So it's so important that we have those conversations where we're like, hey, this is this seems like it happens a lot in our relationship. Like, and this isn't always about resolving every conflict you have, because unfortunately there's going to be certain conflicts that just your personalities don't miss. So.
Ooh, we can't do an episode without mentioning the Gottmans. That's
Obviously.
like in our contract, right?
Are you going to mention the fact that they talk about how so many conflicts go unresolved? Oh,
yes.
I hate that statistic. I hate that statistic.
You hate it? I think
Obviously.
that's so comforting. Really, I'm comforted by that. Because,
I'm glad.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes me think, because I would always daydream about that perfect relationship where there was no conflict. So hearing that conflict is not only natural and normal, but it's going to happen and it's going to be unresolved, and that's okay.
Yes.
I thought that was great. I thought that was great.
I hate that. I hate that.
I'm sorry. Are you still clinging to the dream of the conflictless relationship? Let it go, Jimmy. It's not real.
No, it's not. It's not the conflict free. It's just the wording of the statistic. It's like, what is it? It's like, it's something extremely
I want to say
depressing.
69%.
Yeah, it's like, it's at least
It's
2/3.
nuts. Yeah.
It's 2/3 of all of your unresolved conflicts will continue to be unresolved. I don't remember the exact statistic. It was relatively depressing when I read it.
Wait, we can edit all of this.
I was going to say this is now going to be. We're now into an edit. Yeah.
I'm just Googling unresolved conflict Gottman, and I bet it'll pop right up.
I bet it will.
69%. What?
Wow,
I did
job.
it. 69% of problems
How
in
did they word it?
relationships are unsolvable. That means, ladies, he's never going to fold the towels the way that you want him to. No matter how many times you show him, he's just not going to be able to, and you're going to have to accept it. That's rough.
That's really
Maybe that's
rough.
what you're upset about. I don't know how your wife is folding towels, but it's never going to happen the right way. So,
I mean, yeah, but I guess we should put a little disclaimer on that, because like that doesn't mean that we can't manage them in a respectful way. It just means that.
Oh, I love that.
No,
I love that.
You know,
you're right.
yeah.
One way. This is actually, I don't know if this is healthy or not, but this is something that happened in my marriage that I'm no longer in. He hated the way that I did laundry, and we ended up doing our laundry separately. We just separated all the laundry.
That's
because
funny.
we figured out very early on that I would never do laundry correctly, right?
Oh,
so
my
we
goodness.
so we just did it separately. Let me hit you with a question that you're
I would love
unprepared
that.
for and
I would
see how
love
it
that.
goes. And if you hate it, just edit it out. That's
I
the
would love
magic.
that. It's the magic.
We're the ones controlling the environment here.
That's right.
How can we express our needs without triggering our partners? I probably get this question every other day, I would
How
think.
can we express our needs without triggering our partners?
Without triggering them into defensiveness or
course.
upset or,
Yeah, there's obviously certain things that we can do to help them to not be triggered. One of those would be, I would say, if there was something on my heart that I needed to talk about, you can, it's always nice to ask them if it's a good time to talk about something important to you.
I love that. That's important.
It's very important.
Instead of
We
just
don't think about it
hitting them
instead
over
of
the
just,
head.
even if you're going to do it in a kind
Yeah.
way, it's nice
Yeah.
to still ask, is this a
Yeah.
good time for you? Now, a lot of people would push back and say, yeah, but my partner will say it's never a good time, or they'll just
I've heard that too.
they'll blow it off. And if you're in that situation, then clearly you understand that this is not healthy and you should probably be talking to a professional,
Absolutely.
However,
But you can ask them for a good time though too. Like, hey,
can
I've
ask
got
them.
something really important. Can we schedule a time to sit down and talk
absolutely.
about it? Yeah.
And if they
that would
never
work.
get back to you, sure, that's very frustrating. And you should see that as a clear sign. Something's off here.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean
that couples therapy may be a better route than
Very
sitting
much
down
so.
together if you can't sit down
and
together.
that's an extremely important thing that you just said, because a lot of times we talk about different tools to navigate conflict. Sometimes the advice I give is y'all shouldn't be talking. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, not
yeah.
talking at all, but like you
Right.
shouldn't be conflicting because like
Yeah.
y'all, you don't know how to do it. Like,
Sure. Some of it's not DIY. Some of it you need a
Yeah.
professional to come
you
in
really
and,
do.
and help
I mean,
you, a third party.
I feel like that was us. I really do feel like that was. I don't feel
Yeah.
like we truly learned how to resolve conflict until we were sitting in front of a therapist and they were like helping us navigate. Like, okay, so he just said that. What he
Yeah.
really tell her what you really meant by that statement, or tell us the feelings underneath. Okay, and then it's back and forth and yada yada.
And Jimmy, that is so insanely normal because nobody teaches us how to fight. Nobody teaches us how to. I mean, maybe if you have siblings, you've got a little more training than an only child. But other than that, nobody teaches us how to have conflict in a healthy way with our significant other. So chances are good. Chances are good. Some couples counseling might be a good idea in your relationship where there is conflict that's upsetting.
Yeah. I've only heard of like one or two people say that they're going to go to counseling before they even have trouble. Like they're the newlyweds, and they're like, we're gonna go just because we know
that's
that
amazing.
we know that there's some things that we need to learn, and we want to like get ahead of this game. I'm like, y'all are gonna make it. Like you guys,
absolutely.
I'm like, you guys are the power couple. Okay,
when people start telling you that they're going to get married too, maybe we should find some creative way to be like couples.
I love that
now.
Take this course that we made real quick. I mean,
hey.
I know. I love that. Okay. To answer your question, there are certain things that we can do. One of them is asking, hey, is this a good time to bring up something that's important to me? If hopefully they say yes, or they give you a time that they're, not right now, but in an hour, whatever. And then we go back to, if you want some more information, you can look up the Gottman Soft Startup. It's very important that we speak from a place of self. When we speak about specific behaviors that we have noticed or specific patterns, we don't bring up 2019 like, hey, I'm drudging up all this past.
I love
we
that.
talk about a specific thing that happened and how it made us feel. We try our best not to be accusatory. We try our best not to get critical of their and like start attacking their character and calling them lazy or calling them.
And that can be very tough to do. I definitely
It's very
default
tough.
to you're a jerk. And I really have to zip my lips because it's
I
hard to
default-
not put them on the defensive.
It is. I default to when I say it out loud now, it sounds so malicious or mean, but I tend to default to like, what were you thinking? Or like, why did you do it that way? Like why did you do that?
Yeah.
Especially if it hurt my feelings or something, I'm like, why would you do it that way?
Yeah.
But that's obviously going to come across very who's not going to immediately have a tendency to get defensive?
I feel defensive right now, and you're not even talking about me. Yeah, it's true.
And that's part of maturity, is realizing if somebody did that to me, I bet I would be defensive. And like, that's part of like really trying to self-reflect and be like, okay, like there's some things that even I would react, poorly to if I said those words to myself. Anyways,
it's tough taking yourself out of that state of mind.
Very tough
when you're upset or activated.
And that's an extremely important point about emotional regulation. Like we need to notice when we're kind of a little bit more emotionally more upset than normal,
and ask our partner, hey, I'm a little too activated to have a good conversation right now. Let's take a 5 or 10 minute breather, and I will come back to this. It takes
so much reflection and maturity to do that, but in a conflict, that's really necessary for both of you to be on guard over like, is this getting out of hand? Is this getting are we starting to kind of devolve into fighting, not just like having a healthy conflict?
Totally.
Did I cover everything?
That was wonderful. I feel like it's time for the next question.
Okay,
because I feel like that's good. We got it.
Do you want me to hit you with one?
Do it. I'm ready.
All right. This is one that you've never heard of. I love this question though, so it might take a minute to like calibrate. But how do I know if I'm healed from my trauma? Let's say somebody is going, they want to enter a relationship, but they're cognizant that they went through some stuff in the past, and they want to set themselves up the best chance of success in the future. And they might be asking themselves, how do I know if I'm healed from my trauma?
Okay. So the first thing I always want to tell people, because I see this online a lot, and it low-key enrages me. I want people to know you don't have to be healed from your trauma.
Absolutely.
Before getting into a relationship.
Yes.
Relationships by nature are things that heal us, or can be, right?
Can be, absolutely.
So don't look at all relationships as things that bring up your trauma, because if you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're looking at all relationships as damaging, difficult things, and they aren't all, right? That said, if you've got patterns that you see yourself repeating and they're very painful, and you don't have any strategies for doing things differently, that might be the time to pause, focus your attention on how you can, grab some new strategies before you dive headfirst into a new relationship that you don't have any plan on a different way to go about it.
Yeah, I love that.
How's that?
I love that.
So
it's absolutely good.
Yeah, thank you. I liked it. There are definitely some of my traumas that I don't know that I'll ever consider myself healed from. They may always be triggering. They may always be sore spots. But I have so many strategies and tools now for dealing with them. So I don't worry about the level of healed I'm at. Am I 89% healed? Am I 20% healed? I don't worry about that. If I'm worried about the patterns at all, I'm like, where are my strategies? Do I need more strategies? Are the ones I have failing me? Am I looking at this the right way? How does my partner think I'm doing with these? Like, there's so many better ways to go about it. Yeah, than going, how healed am I on a scale of 1 to 10?
I always say that perfection isn't the goal. Direction is, growth and maturity and awareness. That's, you don't need to answer the question, am I healed to enter a relationship? It's really just, do I understand what's going on inside of me? Do I understand what happened to me and why it was wrong and how to not repeat those behaviors? But
I love it. That felt good.
Whose turn was? Oh, it's your turn.
It's my turn. Okay.
I can't wait.
Oh, this is okay. We need some positivity. We need our 5-to-1 ratio. That's another thing I was talking to my partner today about. Gottmans. Let's just have this be the Gottman podcast.
I'm pretty sure they're all going to be there.
I know. We're aiming for 5 positives to every negative in the relationship. Correct. So
that's a must. That's a must.
So those last 2 were a little heavy. Let's get a positive one in here and bring our ratio up. What actions or gestures does my partner appreciate most? And I'm always a little weirded out when people ask me that, because I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know your partner and everybody's different, but I bet you've got an answer if somebody asks you, like, I really want to make my partner feel loved and special, and sometimes I don't know how to do that. Jimmy, do you have any advice for me?
So I love that. So here's off the cuff, the initial answer. Men love it when your partner, I'm sure this goes both ways, but a lot of men would say they agree with it. They love being appreciated for the contributions that they are making. They love, they feed on that praise. And the Gottmans talk a lot about admiration. And admiration gets really tricky in a lot of relationships, because especially a lot of people watching this, they would probably say, well, I would love to admire my partner, but I'm caught up in all these other feelings. I'm caught up in all this resentment, and they don't help me around the house, and they disrespect me, and yada yada yada. But we tend to forget that the goal is admiration. The goal is mutual admiration for each other. Right. And the Gottmans are extremely I don't know what the word would be, direct.
Oh, they're fanatical too about cultivating an environment of appreciation
and admiration. And we tend to think, well, sure, that would be great, but I can't do that because of X, Y, and Z.
Right. And if I compliment him, he's going to keep doing the things that drive me nuts, and nothing will change. And
I have to. I've heard multiple times, I have to get on him, I have to nag him, or else nothing will get done. And we're sympathetic to those issues, and I'm not saying
I know that feeling. I know that feeling. For sure. Yeah.
And I want those issues to get worked out in front of a professional. We're just telling you that the research shows that if admiration is absent from your relationships, that's a huge issue. Sure. Regardless of what you want to say your excuse is, but
well, let's run a little fun thought experiment here too. You can play along if you'd like. Let's say you're doing the dishes in the kitchen, and your partner walks in and gives you a little hug around the waist and says, I love that you're doing the dishes right now, thank you so much. And then she leaves. How much more motivated are you to be looking around for other things that you can do that are great, as opposed to a scenario where she walks in and notices that you're doing the dishes in some way that drives her nuts, and she makes a comment on that. That puts you in a completely different state of mind. You're not going to be looking for other good things to do. So that's what I try to convey to people who tell me, well, I can't compliment him, then he'll never do anything different. It's like, you have to compliment him, because without that environment of appreciation, we're focused on defending ourselves and how can I defend myself against all these attacks, instead of how can I do things that make my partner smile and feel loved.
And I think it's absolutely vital, and it tends to get neglected, like just a culture of intentional appreciation and admiration. So that's obviously huge, to at least be working towards that goal. If you're not there yet, that's perfectly fine. But just know that, like, oh yeah, this is what it's supposed to be. This is what we should be both shooting for.
And here's I have if I may interject.
Please.
When people ask me what actions and gestures do my partner appreciate the most, I always tell them, ask them. I always say that, like, you need to ask them. It's so important that you find out directly from the horse's mouth what makes them glow.
That is part of intimacy, obviously, is knowing your spouse inside and out. And you should absolutely. Now, I will give women a lot of credit. Sometimes when you ask men, hey, how do you feel loved and valued most?
I don't know. Yeah.
They're like, like, how about you stop bothering me while I watch the game?
Oh my gosh.
I'm just saying, like, sometimes that's all that they can come up with. So it's those little things, but I know that he's going to appreciate you admiring him, going out of your way to intentionally appreciate the efforts that he's, even if you only think that his efforts are, well, he does go to work 10 hours a day. Like, I'm just saying, like, find things that you can appreciate. Okay. So I've gone too long. I've gone too long on this one. The next one is obvious, because, every woman knows. I would say, initiating some sort of sexual intimacy is absolutely, I'm going to say that's probably at the top of most guys. Most guys' love languages are physical touch and words of affirmation. So that goes with the admiration, and that goes with the physical touch.
I'm going to pause you
Please
now
pause
because
me.
I know every woman that's listening to this right now is like, no, like there's I can hear it echoing in the future.
Well, obviously.
Yeah. But
Well,
initiating's hard for us. It's hard for us. It is.
Yeah.
It's hard for us in a different way than it's difficult for you guys, I would say.
Oh, I'm sure it's a completely different. But I'm just saying that if your man was really self-aware,
yeah,
I bet that he could say,
He'd
"I
request
love
that.
it. I love it when she initiates. Like I
Okay.
love it." Because think about it. Think about the other way around. When he's chronically not, when he's the only one that initiates, he might come across as like, oh, he's manly and he doesn't really have a lot of emotions, or he doesn't show. But that hurts. That hurts from.
Oh, it's
like,
probably lonely, invalidating.
It feels very undesirable. I don't. You don't feel very desired. Now you might not be desired because because you aren't creating an environment where she even wants to desire you. You're not cultivating intimacy. You're not pursuing closeness. And but we're just telling you, like, for the people that are like, no, my relationship is pretty good. I want to do some extra things for my man. Like, what can I do?
Yeah, they're already in the state of mind. Yeah,
because I get those questions, and then I'm like, oh, fantastic! Like, this is exactly what he wants from you.
I'm going to remember that. And Chris will thank you for bringing that up today on the show.
Yeah,
because
those are huge. But like you said, I would think to yourself, what do I think? And then I would just say, like, this is what I've been thinking, but like, I want to hear it from you. I want to know exactly what you think.
Ask them.
But that's a very vulnerable conversation, and sometimes men,
it is. It is. I know.
Do you want me to?
I can remember asking him stuff like that in the beginning, and he even admitted, he was like, I can't just come up with this stuff on the spot. Like, if you ask me a question like that, this is like area that I've never delved into. Give me like a day to chew on that question before I come back to you. And
that's interesting.
I thought that was a good way to do it.
All right, I have a question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, listen, if you can't answer this question, then
we'll edit it out.
I'm just saying, with all of because you're like the queen of this. So
okay, this is an attachment question, isn't it?
Yeah. How do I deal with my anxiety when my partner is taking time or space away from me?
Ah, that's a big one. I know, just listening to that, people's anxiety is rising because they're imagining their partner like ditching out on them. And
now, whether it's during conflict, whether he or she is just like taking like, I need some time away, or maybe it's just because they're an independent person and they like to go, they're just like, hey, I want to go away for the weekend with my buddies or my girlfriends. And you're just kind of stuck in this anxious, like,
yeah, I've been there many times. So the thing that I'm going to start out with is, this answer is for a relationship that's mostly good. It's mostly good. If your partner is constantly gone, if you're the person who's sending me messages saying that you haven't heard from your partner in 2 or 3 weeks, this answer is not for you. I'm talking about the people who have a mostly good relationship, or at least 50-50 good, and they're feeling a lot of anxiety and nervousness when they're not getting texts back immediately. They're not getting phone calls back in a timely manner. Their partner's gone for the weekend and not telling them what time they'll be back on Sunday. Kind of more general anxiety in a relationship, not more extreme or even abusive, weeks long without communication. So the answer, nobody's gonna like this, Jimmy. Why did we have this question in here? Practice. Sorry, guys. It's a lot of practice. For me, I had to spend a lot of that alone time sitting with very uncomfortable feelings, asking myself, why am I so insecure when he's gone for an entire day? Where are these feelings coming from? What can I personally do with this? Is this something that I need to write down and bring to my therapist in our next session? I think it's a tough question because people want an answer that will bring their partner back to them. You know? Course. They want the answer that'll stop all that distance from happening. But if you've yeah, please do. Please interject.
Well, I just had a thought real quick because especially if you kind of identify with that anxious attachment and you happened to get into a relationship with an avoidant attachment, which almost never happens, by the way.
No. Yeah, it's done. It's all of us, guys. It's all of us.
Super rare, right? Yeah, except for it's all of us.
Yeah.
Here's a great point. So especially if you think, yeah, my significant other seems to fall into the avoidant category. Okay. They crave independence. If I say anything that's not right, please correct me.
I will correct you on the spot. Yep.
Please. They crave independence, and let's just say that he wants to go away for the weekend or whatever. The fact that you are cool with that, the fact that you give him a little more slack in the line, I feel like that makes him want to come back even stronger.
You're absolutely correct. Our ability to give them the space to be their independent self builds safety. Remember? Now we're tying it all back to the beginning of the episode here.
Absolutely.
And when they feel safety, that increases their capacity for closeness.
Yes.
So, yeah. So maybe in those terrifying moments when you're sitting alone and you're feeling such heightened anxiety, you can remember everything that I'm doing to give them healthy independence is going to make them more able to come close to me.
For sure.
That said, too, let's reach into our toolkit and setting some boundaries. Another episode, we can't go an entire episode without talking about boundaries either. But I told my partner, who is fiercely independent, I love that you have things that you like to go do that light you up. But if you want to be with me, I need to know when you're coming back. At least a time frame. It doesn't have to be exact, or if it's going to be later, please do me the courtesy of letting me know through text. It doesn't have to be a big long thing. And I promise you, I will be cool with it. And I will hope that you had a good time while you're gone.
Yeah. And that's so important that you brought that up, because I don't ever want anybody to feel like, well, this is what you need to do and your partner can just do whatever they want. No, we're assuming that both of you, especially if you're on a spectrum of anxious or avoidant attachment, that you are kind of working towards, as an avoidant, you might be thinking I know what kind of triggers her and what makes her anxious. So I'm actively working towards her instead of just not thinking about it,
Whatever. Yeah. Another great sentence, I said, I care about how we both experience this relationship. I care about your experience of it, and I also care about my experience of it. And
that's
if you
so vital.
if you want me to be happy in this relationship, that's just something that needs to happen. I need to know when you're coming and going. And because I care about your experience of this relationship, I want you to be able to go do the things that you want to do. I want that for you also. Yeah. That diffused him a lot, I know, in the beginning. So,
and that brings us right back to emotional safety. I think, I feel like if both partners are mutually respecting each other, I feel like if both partners, however you just said it, where you're like, I care about how you experience this relationship. If both partners are saying that, you can conquer the world.
Absolutely you can.
If you don't have that in your relationship, it always tends to suffer,
Yeah.
So on that, let's launch real quick into another question where we just kind of talk about, what does healthy love look like? Because obviously we've mentioned emotional safety. I'll start if you want me to while you're thinking.
Okay, please do.
I feel like we mentioned emotional safety. We mentioned mutual respect. We mentioned appreciation and admiration. We mentioned closeness. Now, unfortunately, all of those are just buzzwords. So within all of those are little things of okay, but how do we do that? But it really all boils down to practicing that vulnerability and that healthy communication. Just like Ricky said, you should both have the courage and the honesty to ask each other, how do you feel loved in this partnership? And then, because people always say, well, I don't know how to do any of those things. And it's well, most of it is just conquering our fears of just having those difficult conversations.
Totally. And accepting that we might be really bad at it before we're really good at it. So
absolutely. But you can never go wrong with two people that are I really do care about how you feel loved. And so I just want to know And then the hard part is remembering to do the things that they say.
That is the hard part. One great thing too, back on the idea of being on each other's team. My partner and I work very hard to not push each other out of our respective comfort zones. So I think that is a good thing to keep in mind. He knows that my comfort zone is a lot of closeness. It's a lot more closeness than he's probably comfortable with. But he doesn't want to push me too far outside of that. And I know that his comfort zone is a lot more independence and doing his own thing. And I don't want to push him too far outside of that. So both of us are working to make the other one comfortable. Not one person working for their own needs. I'm working on his behalf, and I'm also considering my own.
So let me hit you with another question. So, all right, I get this question a lot, and I don't want to single out men, but I'm really good at it. So why does my husband get so defensive when I talk about my feelings or needs?
I get that question too on my account also.
For sure.
So does that mean...
Or do you want to take it?
Is this a question about men specifically then?
Yes.
Is that what it's going to be? Okay. I think you should start as the man.
You should start. I'm going to start, but I want you to chime in because I love your perspective. Okay. So I believe he's getting defensive because he feels attacked. He feels unfairly accused. He most likely feels unappreciated. That goes back to all those things that we talked about, how he feels loved most. Now he feels as if he's being unfairly blamed for something. Now that might not mean it's true, but just like how you don't want him to invalidate your feelings, just because you don't understand what he's feeling, if he knew what he was feeling, he could probably tell you, I feel like you're unfairly attacking me. I feel like you're unfairly blaming me for this. So he also doesn't appreciate it when you kind of invalidate his feelings there. So we have to navigate this because he is feeling something. He's getting defensive for a reason. I'm not saying that reason is justified. I'm just saying there is a reason behind what's happening. A lot of it stems from he doesn't want to feel like you're calling him a failure. He's hearing something that you're not necessarily saying. And so that's why it's so important to slow down. When we start to see our partner getting defensive, we slow down and say, I think something's happening here. It feels like you can even use those words. It feels like you feel like you're being blamed or attacked or accused.
You know why I love that?
Can we talk about that? And just to see what he says, because he will say, usually he will say, I do feel like that. And then he'll launch into,
a deeper exploration of it. You know why I love that? Would it be fair to say that I think men, when they're young, don't get nearly as much practice or instruction on how to identify the things that they're feeling in real time?
Massive problem.
And so when we bring up uncomfortable things with them, that starts that storm in their head of emotions, and they don't know how to recognize what's flying around in the same way that women who are traditionally, we get a lot more training and experience with it. And so I know it's tougher for my male partner to navigate that stuff and those feelings in the moment.
You know what else is a huge problem in that whole scenario is a lot of men or women, they grew up with critical parents. And this is a huge issue because deep down, if they don't feel like they're allowed to make a mistake, when you essentially come and say, hey, when you did X, even if you take responsibility for your feelings, even if you're vulnerable, even if you do all of the steps, you soft start up and you say, when this happened, it made me feel hurt. It made me feel unappreciated. It made me feel like we're not on a team. That immediately triggers him. I'm not allowed to make mistakes. And that triggers his shame, and he is in a different place. That's why he almost seems like he's spaced out for a second, and he's either reacting with anger, and it's unproportional to what you're like. You're like,
and
why?
He can't hear anymore. He can't hear you anymore in that state.
He's immediately flooded.
Absolutely. And I'm a woman, but I definitely grew up feeling the weight of my parents' expectations. And when my partner comes to me with things that I've done wrong, I am immediate. I'm transported back to 6-year-old me who's done something wrong, and I feel ashamed for it. So
and we've touched on this before. I remember you saying. I remember you talking about the shrink ray. But that that's such an important. Now I want people to hear me that I understand how extremely frustrating that is. We're just like, I'm not saying that any of this is justified. I'm not saying if I got defensive at my wife when she simply told me her feelings, I'm still in the wrong. I'm just
it doesn't justify bad behavior. But it's good to look at this stuff with some empathetic eyes and see why our partner might be.
And it's extremely frustrating when you're just trying to you're trying to do everything right. You're trying to reconnect with them. You're trying to be honest and vulnerable. And they essentially, unintentionally punish you for it. And they dismiss it. And that causes you to not ever want to bring something up again. So I totally understand that. I'm just saying that this is one of those times where if this is happening, this might be a time where you're like, okay, I know I'm doing everything that I can. So maybe we should seek professional help because... Clearly,
that might be a time for counseling.
Clearly, this is a disconnect here. And this is very important. There's no reason to continue fighting. There's no reason. I mean, you're not doing anything by just getting into that fight and Well, you're by letting things escalate, it brings things down, Yeah. It creates the space and the distance that you don't want. Exactly. So that brings me to another question that I want to ask that I get a lot, and it's why do we keep fighting? So I want to hear your answer to that. Why do we keep fighting? I'll give you mine.
Yeah. Why do we keep fighting? That's one that I don't get as much. Maybe just not phrased that way. The folks who are messaging me absolutely are fighting, but why do we keep fighting? I think if you're having the same fights, because that's what that question sounds like. It's the same fights repeating. If you're having the same fights, you may not have enough tools in your tool belt for handling those fights in a healthy way. It does not mean that you don't care about each other. I mean, if you're still coming back together despite all the conflict, you clearly care about that person very much. But if you're having the same fight over and over again and you're dealing with it in the same old ways, I would say that would be an issue of not enough resources for dealing with things in a healthy way.
I think you're spot on. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks.
I
Your approval means so much to me, Jimmy. I seriously, I'm very happy that you like that.
When I get that question, I have no tolerance for people that are in a tough spot in their relationship and they tell me all we do is fight. I have no tolerance for it. I'm like, okay, well, stop fighting today. Like I'm not like, you know how nice I am, but I'm not nice when you tell me that all you guys do is fight. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to put a stop to that right now because it's not doing anything. So the fact that you think, well, how could we possibly stop fighting? Well, it takes two to fight. Like it takes two. It absolutely takes two to fight. So like
it sure does.
When you know that, okay, good. I want to hear it. Yeah. When that light bulb goes off in your head, like, oh, it takes two to fight. I don't actually have to fight. I mean, once you know why you're fighting, oh, I'm fighting because I feel unappreciated. I feel emotionally disconnected in this relationship. I feel like I can't even trust my partner. Well, you're fighting because you're terrified of this relationship crumbling before your eyes, and you just want to do anything you can to reach out and grab them and desperation. But once you realize, oh, we're just going round and round in circles. This isn't doing anything. Then it takes two to fight. I would say absolutely you need to stop fighting. Do not criticize, do not shame, do not get defensive, do not get dismissive, do not name call, do not blame, shift. When you start to see those hot button things that I just mentioned, when you know what they are and you start to see them coming up in your fights, you can go, oh, well, hold on, I think we're in a fight. And then you just leave. I mean, you can walk away. You can say, well, I meant like on your way out. You're like, right. I'm gonna go take a 45-minute break. I'll come back and we can continue this discussion. But there's no reason why you should just continue fighting or I want people to know you don't have to stay stuck in the same destructive cycles. You don't have to.
I think I saw
But you touched on that better,
Oh, well,
by saying you don't have the tools.
Yeah, you don't have the tools. I saw this on the Secure Relationships account.
Yes,
on
I love her
Instagram.
account. If you haven't gone to her account, please,
there.
right
Be
after
amongst
this,
the millions.
it's at the Secure Relationship. She's fantastic, and
Yeah.
she'll never hear us plug this, so
She'll
it's not like
never
we're doing it. No. But you will not regret it, because you will learn so much from her account.
Absolutely. And I think she talks about conflict a lot, and I'm sure this sentence comes from her account. It said, in the middle of a fight, when you realize what's happening, you say, I don't want this for us. I don't want this to be the way that we're communicating. And
love
for
that.
that reason, I'm going to take a breather. I will be
Yeah.
back at this precise time because I care about this issue, and I'll see you then, right?
Absolutely.
And who can fight with that? Which leads into my story. I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter by nature.
You don't look like a fighter.
I know, you wouldn't think that. I just look like an angry Smurf when I'm upset. It's not very impactful, but
That's funny.
I definitely, when things get heated, I have more of a tendency to lose my head about it than my partner does. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be the one who starts, my voice will get a little bit louder, and I'll start getting a little attacky. And he is so good about this weird serial killer calm comes over him. And he's just
You totally should rephrase that, but still, I know what you mean.
I mean it as a compliment.
Those words have never been said before, so congratulations.
I'm a writer, Jimmy. That's what I do. This beautiful serial killer calm. And he's like, this isn't how we're going to do this. And I'm just like, I love it. It's very,
I bet you that is,
and you can't fight with that. You can't fight with that. I tried once to keep the fight going, and if it's only one person, it doesn't work. And it
just doesn't work.
No,
I love
it's
that.
a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, this isn't how we're doing it, I'm not talking to you anymore. It was
Right.
like, this isn't how we're doing this. Have a seat, right?
Yeah.
Let me get you a drink of water, or it's something stronger depending on the fight. And right, let's talk about this in a better way.
I love
and
that.
Like, wow,
I'm not
dude, where'd you learn that? You know?
I love that. He probably read your book.
Excellent plug. Yeah. Okay.
I know.
All right.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if you can see I have your book, Anxious Heart's Guide.
Thanks.
You should get it.
Oh, hey, as long
up?
as we're plugging things here.
Oh, okay.
If you guys are listening to this, the audiobook is released.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
At this time of recording, it's not. But if you can hear this right now and you want the Anxious Heart's Guide in audiobook, now's the time. Head over
Love
to
that.
Audible. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Go ahead.
I love that.
Thank you.
What I was going to say, I'm not a counselor, but if I was, I would tell people that I would make them in my office. I would make them look at each other and say, "I love you more than any fight that we might have."
Oh, that's nice. That's good
And
too.
then, because when you look at somebody in the eyes and you have to say that,
you can't fight with them.
there's just
hearing
something
that.
special
Yeah.
about that, and hopefully that kind of takes you into little light bulb moments of like, okay, but how do we actually execute that? Because there's plenty of
Yeah.
tools and resources to actually live that out. I love you more than any fight that we're going to have. And but what does love look like during a fight? That's an
Totally.
important question too. So anyways,
and I gotta say, my buddy Adam, who we will definitely have on the podcast.
yeah, I love him already.
Yeah, Fix Your Picker on Instagram. He's
Yeah.
also not paying for this. I just love his account.
Yeah.
He said that him and his wife, they love the phrase "I love you" and then they say the thing. Not "I love you," but meaning the love is not conditional, even though you're folding the towels the wrong way and the dishes are all done wrong. I love
Yeah.
you and I need blank, whatever
Yeah.
it is you want to insert there. The I love you
love
and is
that.
a great startup. All right, Jimmy, here's another question. What can
Okay.
I do to help my partner feel safe to open up to me? Because I know when I want to have an uncomfortable or a deep conversation with my partner, sometimes he's kind of just, I can feel the wall coming up, I watch it go up, the drawbridge raises, and
Right.
what can I do as the partner of somebody who might be feeling a little defensive or unsafe to make them feel more open and ready to talk?
We already talked about kind of having a culture of admiration and appreciation. That obviously plays a role, because if your Gottman ratio is off, if you're not at 5 to 1, then all of these types of conversations, these difficult conversations, become a lot more difficult because your ratio isn't where it needs to be. So,
sorry. So you're saying that's something that I specifically can do, is bring that ratio up. The compliments and the admiration and appreciation are one of the things that would bring the drawbridge down. Right?
I mean,
is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying. But I don't want to. But I also don't want to put all of the responsibility on you, because obviously,
absolutely,
you know that I believe that it is extremely imperative in our relationships. And I quoted "Men are from Mars, women are from Venus" last week.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it went something like this: It's imperative that you have two partners where one partner can freely express their hurts, needs, and desires, and the other partner can receive them. And obviously, the person expressing is doing it in a respectful, non-accusatory way, and the person receiving it is doing it with validation and understanding.
Ideally,
that's how it works best.
Yeah.
And that goes both ways, obviously, as it always does. So obviously my first point is, if you feel like your partner is defensive, they're closed off, how do I get them to feel safe to open up to me? There's certain things you can do. There's certain things that are out of your control. So the things that you can do are to make sure that you have a culture of appreciation and admiration. Have I laid that groundwork to where when I come to them with a hurt or a complaint, they don't just automatically think, oh, what is it now? Like, of course, this is just another.
Something.
It's always something. When's the last time you told me something positive? You come at me and it's always something negative. Now, of course, I understand that a lot of times it's like, yeah, but it is always negative. I understand. I'm just saying, like, optimally, anybody who's ever listened to me before knows that how they respond and whether or not they open up to you is not simply just something that you can say. You can't control them in that way. They have to be
very true.
They have to be vulnerable, and they have to choose. They have to understand that that distance, that emotional disconnection that they're feeling, they can't just avoid. They can't just avoid. They can't just dismiss. They can't just wall up. That's not safe, So that's the other thing I wanted to say. But I also wanted to add on that I get questions. I've gotten a few questions from some amazing men that say, hey, I used to be like you and just kind of oblivious, but I'm starting to learn about this stuff. Can you tell me what are some good ways for me to be emotionally safe for my partner?
Oh, that's fantastic. I can answer that, right?
Please.
I think advice that I would give to men who are unfamiliar or uncomfortable with opening up would a really great way to start is just by telling someone how you feel. That's it. Just sharing an emotion that you have. You don't have to say why. You don't have to say where it's coming from, but just telling someone, hey, like, I've been feeling really frustrated lately, or I've been feeling really down lately and I don't know why. You don't have to have all the answers, but sharing, opening up means just letting them peek and see what emotions you're having. That's a great start. And women are not going to be upset if you don't know the reason that you're frustrated or sad. We'll just be like, oh my gosh, he's talking to me about his emotions. That's it. You've won right there. It's a great start.
True.
And it's easy to do. Think about how you're feeling. Express that. Find a feeling word. You can use the feelings wheel online if you need help with that. And,
because sometimes that can be tricky, but
sometimes it can be tricky. It's a good start.
You can figure it out. Yeah. And I wanted to add to that because it's so important that they, as men, that we're doing that. But it's also important, just like we talked about a culture of appreciation and admiration. I would tell my men that they need to be building a culture of how to listen to their partner, because we notoriously just don't do a great job at listening. So part of cultivating emotional safety is, like we've said all along, it's inviting and encouraging their feelings instead of just dismissing them or treating them as burdens. That never leads to closeness. But what really leads to closeness is listening to understand their perspective. And if you don't care about their perspective, I just don't think you care about them.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because that's part of love too, is truly
it's
caring
absolutely part of
how
love.
the other person is experiencing the relationship. If you don't care about that, you shouldn't be in a relationship with that person.
I think that's very true. Let me lead you into one more question.
Okay.
What is my partner thinking during conflict?
I love this. What is my partner thinking during conflict?
I kind of already touched on it from the men perspective, so maybe you could touch on it.
Let me bring an attachment perspective into it.
Yeah.
How about that? The 4 S's of secure attachment are safety. It's when someone feels safe, seen, soothed, and secure. And during conflict, we're missing one or more of those. So if your partner is looking activated and the conflict is getting escalated, they may not be feeling safe, meaning they can't express themselves, or they might feel physically worried about themselves, in which case couples counseling or call the police, right? Great place to mention that our podcast does not apply to abusive relationships. I think we should probably say that every time.
Yes.
They may not be feeling seen, meaning the issue that's upsetting them is they don't feel like you're actually looking at the issue that's upsetting them or their emotions about it. They may not be feeling soothed. Sometimes we don't want the problem to be solved. We just want a hug or a pat on the back. And then because of all those things, we may not be feeling secure, meaning we're worried that this issue will happen again, and it makes the foundation of our relationship unsteady.
Yes.
So any one of those things could be happening in the mind of your partner during conflict.
Yeah. And from my perspective, I always just try to focus on curiosity. If you were my partner and something was upset with you, or you were upset about something, being curious and trying to fully understand you. I like to say, try to make it a goal that you can summarize what they're feeling and what they're needing.
Great tip.
So that they would agree you got it. You at least got it. Let me hit you with another question, even though I'm going to answer it, because I get this question a lot. What am I supposed to do when my husband? I get a lot of questions from women, so I'm sorry to pick on you husbands, but for the one guy that's watching, Frank.
Frank.
What am I supposed to do when my husband refuses to help with the mutual chores? I get this question a tremendous amount. It really does break my heart because once again, it goes back to he obviously other things are happening other than just him. He's just not helping. He obviously feels like, well, I'm contributing in lots of other ways. You're making a big deal about nothing. So it's imperative that we obviously both get to the bottom of what's actually going on and not just arguing about it. Sometimes it's not about the dishes. It's about the distance in the relationship.
That's the truth.
And sometimes it's just about the dishes. Like, just do the dishes, please. So,
right.
So what I want to say to this is it goes back to accepting the influence of our partner. You remember the Gottman quote. I don't know if you remember. It's not as common, but it's a powerful quote. Gottman says that this is in heterosexual relationships, that when a man doesn't accept the influence of his female partner, that there's an 81% chance that relationship fails.
Wow, that's high. Huh.
And what I believe that he means, he goes into depth about what accepting the influences, but you probably already understand that when she comes to us and says, I feel neglected because I'm doing all the mutual chores in the home, yes, you're fixing things when it breaks and you're changing the oil every couple months, and I get it, but but these daily tasks, like I'm in the trenches here with the kids and I'm doing the dishes and I'm making the dinner and I'm the only one checking for poop in the baby's, and it gets really, really overwhelming.
Oh yeah.
And you're just desperate for that person to kind of be in that world with you. And when they're not, it feels you feel very abandoned and you feel very neglected. And sometimes it comes down to just the smallest things, like, you made a dinner and he didn't really say thank you for the dinner, and it just feels like an entitlement, and then he can't even put his dish in the dishwasher. It's just like it snowballs. And so anyways, how do I get him to help me with the mutual chores? I think it's imperative that one, we be able to have that emotionally safe conversation where you can actually tell him, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm needing from you. It's perfectly fine to say, I really do need you. And you can get very specific. I need you to do X, Y, and Z. Now, people hate that advice because it goes against, it's hard to say, and it goes against, especially a lot of us anxious attachers. We don't want to have to tell them how to love us. They should they should know that information. We've been together 8 years.
I know that feeling.
You should know that. And I empathize with that tremendously. And there's a part of you that's right. They should anticipate your needs. And I teach men to do that. However, there is also a time where you need to specifically tell people what you need from them.
Sure. Because people aren't mind readers and your partner wants to win. They do. They do want to win.
It doesn't seem like it, but
it doesn't seem like it, but they do. And they might not know how. And they might not know what they're doing wrong, you know?
Yeah. So sometimes the stupid answer to that is that it's really helpful to do this in front of a third party where you just talk about how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it is just going to trigger people. Let me guess, every time you ask him, or every time you tell him that you feel neglected with the mutual chores, he always brings up all the other things that he does to contribute. So of course there's other things going on beneath the surface that you really need somebody else to dig into. So
sure. I think we covered some really good stuff today. I did.
And if we left out your question, we really are sorry. Please feel free to email us and tell us you really missed these most important questions, and we'll include them on the next one.
I love post requests. So if you guys want to DM on Instagram or TikTok for Jimmy, probably, or Instagram, either one. Anyway, find us on social media. I'm Anxious Hearts Guide. And Jimmy, do you ever throw your handle out, or is it just your name?
Yeah, it's just my name, Jimmy Knowles.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like Beyonce.
Oh, there you go. Look, Jimmy Knowles, like Beyonce. Find us online.
That's actually not in the username. It's not like
Beyonce. Maybe it should be. No,
it really should be.
Send us your questions, things that we didn't cover. We love talking about this stuff, and
we do.
I love that you guys are here listening and working on yourself and your relationship. That's an awesome thing. It's a hard thing, and it's an admirable thing. So,
and we're super proud of you. And we will see you in episode 4.
Please come back.
Thank you.
Please come back. We love
it. That sounded way too desperate.
Cut it out. Cut it.
Please come back. Please
listen to our show. Okay.
I would do this even if nobody listened.
I would too. But I think Frank's listening, so we got to do it for him.
Praise God for Frank. He fell asleep hours ago.
This is his nighttime. This is how he gets to sleep at night.
He told his wife that he was listening to a podcast. She made him listen, and he fell asleep.
She's so happy. Yeah. Okay.
She's so happy. All right.
See you
I'm going to let you go.
next time.
Bye.
Bye.